This week, our question is what makes more business sense for BFL, a win by Chris Anderson or Jared? Sometimes it's very clear cut for a promotion who they need to win in a fight. For example, last week when Max Holloway was fighting Jose Aldo in UFC, it was very clear they needed Max to win because Jose Aldo had ran through the division, beat every top contender at least once. He had beat Frankie Edgar twice, and his only loss was against Conor in 13 seconds, which there was no way Conor would ever give him a rematch because he already beat him in 13 seconds, a guy who hadn't lost in 10 years. So any other way the second fight would go would be a loss for Conor. So there was no way he was going to give him the rematch. But with Max winning, there's still a lot of matchups for them to make. He hasn't faced Frankie Edgar, and to a lot of fans, that's an interesting fight because they think Frankie Edgar might be able to take him down. And it's an interesting fight. There's more options, and he's an English-speaking champion, so he can, reach out to the fan base better. Now, in our case, Jared versus Chris Anderson, it's a little bit different because if Jared wins, what we would do is probably get him maybe to defend his title once as soon as we can, put him against an ex-UFC guy like, I would say, like a Joe Riggs at 185 or a catchweight if Riggs can't make it. And then Jared has proven that he can face the ex-UFC guy. And that's what you need to do. Win the belt, defend against an ex-UFC or Bellator type of guy to show the UFC how you do against a guy like that. And if Jared loses the fight, let's say Chris Anderson wins, and for some reason he doesn't get signed by the UFC, there's still options for him. He can go in a huge super fight still against Matt Dwyer. And again, Matt Dwyer is an ex-BFL champ, but more importantly, an ex-UFC guy. So if Chris beats him, surely he'll be in. And even for Matt Dwyer, that's a big fight because that means after being at UFC, he's beat an ex-UFC guy, and he gets to face a 7-0 guy at that point. So now let's say Chris Anderson loses. What do we do? There's still a lot of options because a lot of people say, well, he's ran through the division. Yes, but he still hasn't faced Ash. Let's say Ash goes in and knocks out David Perron. There's an interesting fight. The guy Chris Anderson hasn't beat, an ex-champion. So that would be a big fight. If Chris wants, it'll be up to him because he's a 3-time champion. He'll kind of get to make the decision on that. But if he wants, he can have that fight. Even David Perron, a rematch. If David Perron knocks out Ash in the co-main, if Chris Anderson wants it and is one fight back at 170 before facing an ex-UFC guy, he can take that fight if he lost that fight. So there's a lot of options. Looking at it as a, ticket revenue immediate standpoint, Jared Revel is a local guy, local lower mainland guy. He teaches kids jiu-jitsu. He's got a big following here, a big fan base. So in terms of gross ticket revenue immediately, that would be better for the business. In terms of branding your champion, you got Chris Anderson, an Aboriginal fighter. He sticks to his roots and his culture. There's a great story there. He gives to the kids. He's overcome trouble in his life, and there's a great story there that we can get behind and let people know. So that's with Chris Anderson. Jared Revel, if you watch his podcast, there's a guy who's overcome adversity over and over in his life. And again, with him, he's using what he's learned through martial arts and jiu-jitsu to teach kids to stay out of trouble and nonsense through doing jiu-jitsu and martial arts. So there's another great story there so that we can get behind and basically let the fans know about these guys. So I think the answer to your question is, in this specific case, what's better business sense for BFL? It doesn't matter. These are both, great corporate citizens, so it doesn't make a difference. In terms of special announcement for this fight, we've been working closely with BC Athletic Commission, and the last thing, this is a big fight between Jared and Chris. Nobody wants to see them get screwed over in such a big fight over something that could easily be avoided. So the BC Commission has agreed as a pilot program to let the referee, just for this one fight, go to instant replay if they wish on a call to review, for example, assuming on a grounded opponent or something. If they want to go instant replay, only the ref can go in the booth and look at the instant replay and make a judgment call. So for this specific fight, Jared Revel title fight against Chris Anderson, there will be instant replay implemented. And that's our question for this week.